The first time I died or had a near-death experience, I actually hadn't had my diagnoses yet. Essentially, doctors had spent 2 years trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Tests were cancelling each other out. There was no definitive way to know what was wrong. Eventually, I managed to get myself to a gynecologist who was more than just a gynecologist, but I can't remember what the term is exactly. And back then, more than 20 years ago, he had this very new form of technology that could actually do an internal scan, which is pretty standard these days. But back then it was considered potentially very dangerous. And would the body be able to deal with the resulting radiation and all of that? And because they hadn't been able to figure out what was wrong with me through any other test, and I had gone for them all, I went to this doctor for the internal scan. But the imaging was really not very good. It's only in the last probably about 5 years that our ability to image inside the body and inside the brain has improved so much. And largely because of improvements that were made through, what do you call an eye doctor? Improvements were made in our ability to actually image what was going on the inside. And that's what led to all this latest and greatest science in terms of brain imaging. But I digress. The imaging back then wasn't very good. But I went for this internal scan, and essentially the reason why some of the other imaging, like the CAT scans and things like that, weren't showing up the problem was just the size of the mass. It was so huge that what was showing up on imaging monitors was just this black blur. So they didn't understand why they couldn't get a clear picture. They didn't understand that all that black blur was mass. But when they did the internal scan, that's what they realized. But because it was so enormous and I was so young, they didn't even consider that it might be cancer. And I was getting negative blood tests from all the cancer panels that they were doing. So they figured that they could just do an operation and remove this massive mass. It was the size of a football. So they scheduled me for an operation, assuming that this was benign, assuming that they could just cut it out and I would be fine. So they got me on the operating table and I bled out. Because this mass, which was in my birth canal, had literally over 100 fingers that had wrapped itself around everything. It was wrapped around my spine. It was wrapped around all my organs. So the more they were trying to remove this, the more they were having to cut these tendrils and extract them, the more I was bleeding.